What's up, my wizards? It's Dev, SBMTG. In case you didn't know, we like magic also. And today, I'm bringing you what's probably going to end up being the cheapest deck I show you all season, just in time for F&M. But don't let the budget fool you. This thing is actually kind of a monster of a budget deck that's going to pick up some wins for you. So today, the return of Mono White Monument. You know, I've kind of always had a soft spot in my heart for White Weenie decks, because White Weenie was like one of my first decks in Magic. Like over 20 years ago, I was playing Savannah Lions into White Knight into Crusade plus Holy Strength that won a shameful amount of games back in the day, but it doesn't seem as good nowadays. Although I'd love Crusade to get reprinted, but still. We do have super high-tech toys nowadays that we only dreamed of back in 1995, including, of course, Oketra's Monument, the whole reason that we're playing the deck. And yeah, we're tearing down the monuments in a couple of months. We're not going to be able to play this for long. So I want to play it while we can because it's back on top thanks to a couple of cards from Core Set. Well, Okemon, as I like to call it, has definitely established itself as the best in its cycle by far and away, and for a reason. Not only does it come with the requisite discount on creatures within its color, but it has the best secondary ability of any of the monuments too. You know, being able to just fill your board like this, and white is a color that already plays tons of cheap creatures anyway. So you're just filling your board to preposterous proportions, and you're getting a lot of synergy on white cards that care about when creatures enter the battlefield. But the real question is, why am I even talking about this card so late into the format? What makes it important right now? Because it hasn't been important since, like, Bygone Bishop left the format, you know. Well, it's because we have a new Bygone Bishop. We just got Mentor of the Meek back, and this is a slick reprint to get while Oketra's Monument is in the format, because the synergies are pretty obvious. Now, in a roundabout way, as long as we have a Mentor and a Monument out, then it effectively is free to draw cards off of Mentor. Because, you know, we'll have to pay the extra 1 for Mentor to draw the card, but we get a discount of 1 mana from Oketra's Monument, so that's really cool right there. But also, note the way Mentor is worded, we get to also pay mana to draw cards whenever one of those tokens comes into play. So that can just lead to a mountain of card advantage. Mentor also changes the math on Monument dramatically, which I feel I should mention because it's one of the most important things about the relationship between the two cards, you know. Usually you'd want to go Monument turn 3, then turn 4 you play 2 3-drops, because that's how you get 6 mana worth of value for 4 mana. That's always been a good deal, but a lot of times you'll go turn 3 Monument, turn 4 Mentor for 2 mana, and then use your other 2 mana on a 2-drop, draw a card. You can still play 2 3-drops on turn 4 if you want to, but Mentor opens up that option to you. Another pretty good option is just to play 2 Mentors on turn 4. That'll get you set up for just like ludicrous card advantage. If you can actually keep that set up on board for another turn, untap on turn 5, you'll be able to draw all the cards you ever wanted and really get a good board presence going. So that's nice too. But another good turn 4 option is just to play Militia Bugler and find our Mentor. The old Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy. This is the other good card that we got in Core Set 2019 for this deck, and it is really, really good in this deck, or pretty much any base white aggro deck where this is going to have a ton of targets, and this can hit literally every single creature in the deck, including itself. It can toot its own horn. You can find a Bugler with a Bugler and really start making some music. Plus, this goes really well with Mentor of the Meek. Don't have to tell you, but if you have enough mana, being able to draw a card and to get another creature off of this is unbelievable. And, don't have to tell you, it's also good with Oketra's Monument, you know. Monument reduces this to only costing 2 mana for a 2-3 body that gets you another 1-1 body and effectively draws you a card. That's just insane value, and when combined with Oketra's Monument and Mentor of the Meek, things get just absolutely insane. You're drawing all the cards for a relatively low amount of mana in that case, and you're getting a lot of bodies in your hand. So, love everything about Bugler. It goes especially well in this deck. You won't understand how crazy this card actually is. You may have suspected this card is very good, but when you actually play it, you'll know. Matter of fact, Bugler is so good that sometimes we're going to want to repeat that enter the battlefield trigger. So we're also going to play 4 copies of Aviary Mechanic. Note how each card goes into the next. That's how you build a deck, kids. But in any case, Aviary Mechanic has always had a place in the Monument deck, for better or for worse. You know, this is always going to be popping something back to your hand to create just massive amounts of value. And note, the big trick is to just keep returning Aviary Mechanics to your hand. You know, use Aviary Mechanic to return Aviary Mechanic. Play that mechanic, return the other mechanic to your hand. Just keep doing this as many times as you have the mana for. And in this deck, you'll get a bunch of tokens on board if you've got a Monument. You'll get a bunch of cards if you have the extra mana and a Mentor of the Meek out. And if you have both Monument and Mentor out, this can get super sick really fast. Again, provided that you have the mana to keep it going. But if we're going to play Mechanic, I want more options to abuse it instead of just Militia Bugler. Bugler's good enough, but again, a little versatility would help. So I want more creatures with Enter the Battlefield triggers. So with that in mind, I'm also going to play 4 copies of Cavalry Drillmaster, which I've come to believe is an overlooked card. Now, really, this card is just a product of the fact that I was looking for decent budget 2-drops. You know, if you had the $10 required to do so, you could just play Remorseful Cleric in this slot, because it's probably a better card than either this or the next card I'm going to show you, which I will spend equal amounts of time justifying once I get to it. But I do want to spend some time justifying this pick, too, because I've really come to like this card, and there's a lot to say about it. Now let me start my list of positives about this card with the fact that it effectively doubles the power of just about any creature in the entire deck and gives that creature first strike for a combat step. That's actually really good. First strike is important in a format with a bunch of other first strike creatures that we might see on the other side of the table. You know, Knight of Grace, Knight of Malice, those are popular, plus even Goblin Chainwhirler is a pretty popular card, and this can suit up any of our creatures to be able to at least deal with it during the attack step if it happens to block. So I kind of like that about it. Plus, the boost isn't half bad in and of itself. You know, +2/+0 is going to get in a lot of extra early damage some of the time, or just make it a lot harder to block our creatures, make it easier for our creatures to defeat theirs in combat. There's just so many things that are good about +2/+0 in first strike, and even if they do kill this creature, you will have gotten some amount of value off of it because it's effectively a sorcery speed pump spell. There's nothing wrong with that for 2 mana. Especially when that pump spell not only puts the body on the battlefield for you, but it might draw you a card if you have a Mentor out, or only costs 1 mana if you have a Monument out. Just all of that is freaking nuts. So I found this to be a really, really good budget 2-drop. But the other 2-drop that I'm probably going to have to do some explaining on is the 4 copies of Eddie Trailhawk in the deck. Again, we're looking for good budget 2-drop options here, and I have low-key liked this card for a while. This is not the first budget deck that this card has shown up in on the channel, because I actually don't think it's half bad, especially in this deck where it might draw you a card, it might only cost 1 mana, and it's going to help you push through damage at least in 2 combat steps. Plus, we've got Aviary Mechanic to help refresh your energy if you need to, you know. So there's that route if you want to take it. But even just getting 2 combat steps with an extra flyer out is really important for pushing through damage in this deck. Plus, before I move on, let me just note that even though they're not the best cards individually, Cavalry Drillmaster and Eddie Trailhawk actually work kind of well with one another, because before you know it, if you have an Eddie Trailhawk out and you cast a Cavalry Drillmaster, you can make one of your creatures a 4-power flying first strike thing for 1 attack step, which is actually pretty good most of the time. But let's cleanse our palate a little bit after the bad 2-drops with the good 2-drop. And it's the last 2-drop in the deck, I promise. It's Knight of Grace, which we're playing all 4 copies of. Now, this may seem like a lot of 2-drops, right? I understand that, but we not only want to play a creature on turn 2, but we want to have multiple 2-drops still in our hand once we get our Monument down. And 2-drops work really well with Mentor of the Meek, too, because they're relatively cheap, so I want lots of options at the 2-drop slot, and we have a lot of good ones, and Knight of Grace is definitely really high up on that list of desirable 2-drops, not only in white, but just in the format in general, you know, like this is immune to Fatal Push, it's immune to Cast Down, it's immune to what else? You know, Vraska's Contempt, Moment of Craving. There's a ton of things that won't kill this that your opponent really wants to kill this. It's also just packed with stats. It's a beast in combat. This thing is unbelievable against most things, but especially black decks. So this is just an awesome drop, no matter what. It's just all the stats. So we're going to play at least 4 copies of this because it's one of the better 2-drops in the entire format. Now, we're also going to play 2 copies of Scourge Champion in the deck. I don't want to overload on 3-drops, but I think this is one of the better 3s that we could play aside from the amazing 3-drops that we're already running. This is great against the mono-red decks, and it ends up giving us a pretty big creature in the scheme of things. You know, getting that 4/4 and getting 4 more life when you eternalize it is probably the best thing about the card, honestly. You get a total of 6 life over the course of a game with this thing. That's unbelievable. Unbelievable, not to mention that it's already good at 3 mana. It's not bad, right? But when you're drawing cards off of it and getting a discount for Monument, it's just that much better. So this is just great, especially against really aggressive decks. Just reset your life total a little bit, and if you have a Monument out, you get 2 bodies off of it. So gaining the life and getting 2 blockers is especially important some of the time too. Just so many good things about Scourge. I'm going to miss it when it's gone. We'll play it while we can. But to finish off the creatures here, I'm going to take you all the way back down to 1-drop to show you the 4 copies of Sky Marcher Aspirant that we're playing, because I want some 1-drops. I want to be able to get on board early. I want something to do on turn 1. You know, this is ostensibly an aggro deck, so I want to be able to apply some pressure if we possibly can, and I think this is the best card for doing that, especially considering that we get the City's Blessing relatively easy. You know, turn 5 will often have the City's Blessing, so this can end up doing more damage than most other 1-drops would do for you. So I like that about it. Again, we're mostly just trying to push through damage. This is probably the best at doing that as far as 1-drops go. But you could play Dauntless Bodyguard in this slot if you're worried about protecting your Mentor of the Meek, for example. But again, in terms of getting the most damage in the course of a game, I think Aspirant is our best bet. But we'll put a pin in the main deck here with the 2 copies of Thopter Arrest that we're playing, because we need some removal. You know, there are some cards that are just good against us no matter how wide we go, and we need options against them, so we just have a no button. Like, no, you can't have that card that beats me. So I want that card to be as cheap as possible too, and Thopter Arrest just ticks all those boxes. Now here's the mana base right here. We're playing 24 lands in the deck. And I know it might be tempting to play 22, 23 in this build. The curve looks really low. The deck is actually way hungrier than it might look at first glance. Now here's the sideboard right here, and this is one of the most self-explanatory sideboards that I've worked with in a while. You know, Adanto Vanguard seems like it's just good enough to be in the main deck, but I hate it against Chain Whirler. I hate it against blue-white control, where they mostly just have exile removal. So it's just not good, and it doesn't get to do what it's supposed to do against a lot of the most important decks in the format. So I relegated it to the sideboard, where it will come in against blue-black, control, and mid-range that has Fatal Push, and other targeted removal spells like that. Adanto can be great in that matchup, but I just didn't find it good enough for the main deck in today's environment. Aside from that, we got Sun Cleanser against the energy matchup, and for the occasional Walking Ballista, I guess, but mostly it's for the energy matchup. And we've got Shield Mirror in there to help supplement the Sun Scourge champion. You could just play 2 Shield Mirror and then put the other 2 Sun Scourge from the playset in the sideboard. I'll leave it up to you, but I really like Shield Mirror against the red decks, and that's why we'd be siding in a card like this in the first place. So I went with the full 4 copies of Shield Mirror here. We're also going to play another Thopter Arrest, just a catch-all answer, which I think we need at least one of in the board, plus Invoke the Divine, which will help us gain a little bit of life back. Nothing wrong with that, but it'll also take care of problem artifacts and enchantments. There's a lot of them in the format right now. And we've got a couple of copies of Dusk Dawn, the most expensive card in the sideboard, but this is really good to bring in against a lot of decks, whether we're either trying to get back some advantage after a Fumigate, or we're just trying to knock a bunch of other medium to big creatures off of the board. Now, before we get to the power rankings here, I just want to bring up one more card, because I had a whole upgrade section planned. But I've already mentioned Remorseful Cleric. You should play that if you can. But the only other upgrade I had to talk about was Angel of Invention, which is another card I think you should play if you have a couple of copies laying around. You know, take out the Sun Scourge champion from the main deck, throw in at least 2 copies of Angel of Invention, because I think the deck could benefit greatly from an Anthem effect. This would be a good finisher. Helps you go wide all of a sudden. If you have the mana, you can draw a bunch of cards. If you have a Mentor of the Meek out, you know, it only costs 4 if you have a Monument out, and get you 4 bodies. Just like, all of that's really good. Or you could just have 1 big, dumb, stupid flying angel and a 1/1 token if you have a Monument out. So just obviously this card looks really good for this deck, but it was just barely out of the budget that I was trying to hit. So I didn't end up playing it, but it definitely goes in if you already have copies in your binder. But here are the power rankings. Finally, got a final score of 61 points, which is very good for a deck that only costs, get this, because I haven't said it yet, $20 on TCG Player. Again, this is probably going to end up being the cheapest deck of the season, and it's so much fun. Just white aggro's fun. White aggro's fun even in a Chain Whirler format, because most of our good turns come on turn 4, turn 5, and yeah, they could just play another Chain Whirler, but in that situation, we've usually drawn a few cards, extended our board into Mentor of the Meek and Militia Bugler, and other creatures that don't die to Goblin Chain Whirler, so this is just a great deck. It may overextend into a Fumigate from time to time, but if you're one of those players that just likes having the biggest board possible, drawing gripfuls of cards, it's just ridiculous what this deck can do if it's allowed to get cooking. Honestly, I can't wait to play this deck next season. I know it loses Oketra's Monument, and it's a Monument deck, but I still think that Militia Bugler and Mentor of the Meek are going to be a great team. in the upcoming standard. They're basically a shell for a white aggro deck's top end at this point. They work super well together, even if you never see an Oketra's Monument. There's just a lot of cool little interactions in this deck that I like an awful lot. You know, playing an aggro deck with synergy is one of my favorite things to do in Magic. So I ended up liking this deck even in a format where I see a lot of Goblin Chainwhirlers. Plus, it's worth playing considering I would imagine that the cards you have to buy for this deck are going to be Mentor of the Meek and Militia Bugler. And you want to get your Buglers now because they're like 25 cents and they're good. Like, I don't think this card's going to be 25 cents forever. Let me just say that much. So get your Buglers now, but those are probably going to be the only cards you really have to buy for the deck. You very likely have just about everything left here. So you got nothing to lose playing this deck. Give it a shot if you possibly can, because if you like, you know, again, synergistic aggro decks, drawing lots of cards, extending a board, having, you know, 30 dudes out at one time, then this is the one for you. And even though the deck is only 20 bucks to play, it's like I always say, why overpay for any deck, even a budget deck? So if you're interested in playing this monster, then just click the first link in the description. That'll take you over to TCG Player. On their website, you can view the deck list in a compact form, which is handy enough, but you can also order any pieces that you might be missing for it. So, you know, the deck might only be 20 bucks, but it's like 30 bucks on a lot of other websites. So if you want that low price tag, just click the link. But did I mention they sponsor my content? I don't know if I did, but I should. Just full disclosure. They sponsor my content, but they're also good folks. Check out the link if you want to check out this deck. But in any case, pretty sure I'm tapped out for this one. It's your turn. Let me know how you felt about this, what pieces you'd play. Bash me over the head for playing Eddie Trailhawk. Whatever you want to do down there, commence to doing it. But I'm pretty sure that's all I got. So do the YouTube stuff on your way out. Just click thumbs up. Subscribe if you're new. Make sure you hit the bell for the notifications. Follow me on Twitter at SBMTGDev or support me on the Patreon if you feel like it. Link in the description below. Hope you do. It's the best way you can spend $1 on the entire internet. Promise you that. But in any case, I'm pretty sure that's actually all I got for now. So I will catch you cats later. I'm Dev from the place. Thanks for watching, my wizards. Spread love and be kind.